people buzzing. There are 4 people running for governor, and he is one of them, a former Navy SEAL. His name is Eric Greitens, and he joins us on the phone right now. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Carson in the Morning Show.
Hey, Rob. Great to be on with you. Thanks so much for having me this morning. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about you just as a person. You are a former Navy SEAL. You served our country honorably. Tell us briefly about your service to the country.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So I did have the honor of serving as a Navy SEAL. I did 4 deployments in the global war on terrorism. I served in Afghanistan in 2003, in Southeast Asia in 2004. I was in the Horn of Africa in 2005, and I did a deployment to Iraq in 2006, 2007. My job there, Rob, I was the commander of an al-Qaeda targeting cell. My unit's mission was to capture mid to senior level al-Qaeda terrorists operating in and around the Fallujah area. And Rob, I'll tell you, people will tell you sometimes that serving in the military is tough, and there were certainly some tough moments. I will also tell you it was a great honor to wake up every single day surrounded by a team of Americans who are all dedicated to serving a purpose that was larger than ourselves.
And I'll just say that not enough can be said about the Navy SEALs and the training that it takes to become a Navy SEAL, and a lot of people fail at it. I mean, just to become a Navy SEAL, you're breathing rare air.
Well, it is. It's a wonderful group of guys to go through the training with, Rob. I was in BUDS Class 237. BUDS stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. It's the basic Navy SEAL training, and as you mentioned, it has the reputation for being the hardest military training in the world. So in my class, we started with over 220 people in the original class, and by the time we graduated, we're down to 21.
Yep.
But I will tell you, Rob, great group of guys, and you go through, everybody's got a good sense of humor, everybody's dedicated to serving their country, and they're dedicated to serving each other. Yeah,
and you got a combat action ribbon, a Purple Heart, and the Bronze Star. That's amazing, sir. Thank you for your service.
You're very welcome, sir. Very welcome.
Now you're moving into something even more dangerous, and that is the world of politics. What have you been doing before you decided to run for governor?
So, Rob, before I decided to run for governor, I mentioned to you I was serving in Iraq as a commander of an al-Qaeda targeting cell. So in 2007, March 28, 2007, my team had been on an operation till about 2 o'clock that morning. We all went to sleep around 3 o'clock that morning, and at around 6 o'clock that morning, we were hit by a suicide truck bomb. Now, I was fortunate, Rob. My wounds were minor. I was taken to the Fallujah Surgical Hospital. I was treated there. I was able to return to full duty 72 hours later. But a lot of my friends were hurt far worse than I was. And so when I came home, I went to Bethesda to the Naval Hospital to visit with some recently returned wounded Marines. And, based on my experience talking with all of these men and women, what I saw, Rob, was that these men and women who'd come home, they were warriors. They'd taken on al-Qaeda. They'd taken an oath to defend the Constitution. But too many of them were being broken and mistreated by our own government. So I decided to do something about it. That day, I donated my combat pay from Iraq. A couple friends put in money from their disability checks, and we used that to start an organization right here in Missouri called The Mission Continues. And what we do at The Mission Continues is that we work with returning veterans as they come home, helping them to find ways to live lives of purpose and dignity and meaning again here at home. We started that in 2007, and now I'm honored to tell you we started it here in Missouri. We're now working in all 50 states, and as you and I talked this morning, we're working with 7,300 veterans around the country, Rob.
We're talking to Eric Greitens. He is a former Navy SEAL. He's running for governor in the state of Missouri. Let's get to what the people are talking about today. I saw your ad a couple weeks ago, which features you firing. Is it an M4?
You got it, Rob. Exactly. Yes.
Why don't we go ahead? We'll run the audio for it. Then I want to talk to you about what reaction you've gotten. Go ahead there, Jared.
For too long, Missouri's been run by career politicians, owned by corrupt consultants, high-paid lobbyists, and special interests. While they get rich, Missourians are hurting. Well, I'm no career politician. I'm a Navy SEAL, and I'll take dead aim at politics as usual. I'm Eric Greitens. If you're ready for a conservative outsider, I'm ready to fire away.
All right, so it features you firing the weapon, and you are firing at what? What was the explosion?
That was a bomb that we had rigged to go off. We wanted to let everybody know we're serious about taking on politics as usual.
Yeah,
so that's right, Rob.
Now, you've taken some heat. I know I'm looking at the St. Louis Dispatch article this morning, editorial. Greitens seems tone deaf to Orlando's tragedy because you guys have decided to not pull the ad in reaction to what happened in Orlando.
Yeah, Rob, look, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, unfortunately, like so many liberals, they're deeply confused about the nature of the threat that we face. They said that Omar Mateen was a confused man. He wasn't a confused man, Rob. He was a terrorist. He pledged his allegiance to ISIS. And just like the men and women who we had to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan who'd strap on suicide truck bombs and blow themselves up in marketplaces, these are not confused people. These are terrorists, and they are intent on killing Americans. We saw this in Orlando. We saw it in San Bernardino. We saw it in Fort Hood. They are going to bring the fight to us, and I'm not going to back down in the face of Omar Mateen or any other radical Islamic terrorist. What we need to do is actually take the fight to them.
But with this specific ad, sir, you gotta be able to understand that people would see this as tone deaf, right? Like, for instance, I tell a lot of jokes on this show. I love telling gay jokes as much as the next guy, but maybe the day after an attack at a gay nightclub, I hold back a little bit. And it seems like that's what people are criticizing. It's not that you're doing the ad with the gun, it's that you haven't pulled the ad with the gun right after the massacre.
Yeah, I think, I got to tell you, Rob, we've had tremendous support from people all over the state.
That was Jared. I support you keeping it on. That was Jared.
Sure, yeah.
He doesn't want to be confused for me. He doesn't like me very much.
I do not. No. Go ahead.
No worries, Rob. Look, man, we've had tremendous support from people all over the state who have said that especially now, especially in a time like this, we want to have somebody who's not just willing to stand up and defend our Second Amendment rights. We want to have somebody who's willing to stand up and fight for Americans. They recognize that there is a fight out there, and when they read the St. Louis Post-Dispatch kind of apologizing for this guy, saying that he's a confused man, when they see President Obama refusing to recognize the ideology that actually drives these terrorists, I think they actually appreciate in a time like this somebody who's willing to stand up and say, we have to, if we really care about people, we have to be willing to fight against the terrorists who are attacking us.
Eric, and also, if it were any other yahoo running an ad with an assault rifle, it might be more of a problem for me, but you earned that, sir. You earned that with your blood. You earned that with your sacrifice. That is your weapon. You have every right to run it, and it would be an insult if you did have to pull it off television. This is to me, it wasn't even a non-issue. If it were anybody else, yes, but you earned that. That was your combat weapon. That was the weapon you used in service to the country. It was your tool there, and you are using it metaphorically as a tool to end corruption in Jefferson City.
Absolutely, and we want to let people know, look, that was what I carried in Iraq and Afghanistan, was an M4, and we use that because we're fighting against Al-Qaeda. We're fighting against a vicious enemy that hated the United States of America, that was driven by this radical Islamic terrorist ideology, and we knew that we had to stand up and we had to fight them there. And in the same way, yes, it's a metaphor. People want to have a leader who's willing to say that Jefferson City's corrupt. This is one of the only states in the country where there's no limit on gifts from lobbyists. And we've said very clearly, hey, I'm going to ban all gifts from lobbyists. I'm going to close the revolving door between legislators and special interests. I'm going to put in place term limits for every statewide office holder. And yes, it's going to be a fight, but we're willing to take on the corrupt career politicians in Jeff City.
Was there an actual discussion amongst your staff about whether or not to leave the ad on air? How does this work? Do you just let the TV schedule play out, or did you guys have to get together in a room and say, all right, do we do this? Do we leave it? Do we pull it? How does that work?
Well, what happened was, there were people who called into the campaign, and my team got together, and they called me, and the answer was very simple, Rob. The answer is, we're not going to back down in the face of Omar Mateen. Yeah. We're absolutely not going to back down. And the other thing that I've known and I've seen my entire life, whether I was serving in the SEAL teams, running my own business, doing this work with veterans around the country, people appreciate resolute courage. They want to know that you're not going to cut and run just because you get a little bit of heat. They want to know that you're going to stand up, that you're going to stand on principle. And here, yes, of course, I'm a defender of the Second Amendment. I'm somebody who's willing to stand up and fight against terrorists. And I'm also willing to let people know we've got a problem in Missouri. So, yes, people, we got together and we said we're not going to back down.
Your top 3 priorities if you become governor, what are the first 3 things you're going to focus on in the state of Missouri?
Number 1, Rob, we touched on it. We're going to clean up the culture of corruption in Jefferson City, right? We're going to make it safe for interns everywhere. Yes, exactly. But seriously, Rob, right? Seriously, we need to have a culture of honorable service. Look, keep in mind, our founding fathers, they had an idea about service, and that was that proven leaders who had proven themselves would engage in public service, actually much like a military tour of duty. You'd go, you'd serve the public, and then you would return to your life, just like George Washington did. This was the idea. They were setting the example. Instead, today, we have career politicians because of their cowardice and their self-interest. They just stay there. They stay there for decades. The other problem that we have to address here is because of the backwards priorities of career politicians. Missouri is 47th in economic growth over the course of the last decade. So we have to create an economy with more private sector paychecks and bigger private sector paychecks. And number 3, we have to have a governor who's willing to stand up and help us to create safe streets. This is after Ferguson, the FBI director has noted there's this Ferguson effect. It's happening not just in Ferguson, all over the state of Missouri and around the country. We need to have a governor who's going to have the backs of our law enforcement officers.
Yeah. As far as economic growth, what are some of the things you're thinking about? Are you talking about tax cuts? Are you talking about incentives to bring business to the state?
Yeah, a couple of really clear things that we got to do, Rob. One is that we got to sign right-to-work legislation. We have to reduce regulations. We have to end tax credit bribery. We have to do all of those things. We also have to approach this in the way that successful governors have done around the country, and that's to recognize that the government does not create jobs. The government creates the conditions in which our business owners can own, run, grow, and operate their businesses. And that means the government has to do things like make sure we've got safe streets, make sure that we've got quality schools, make sure that we've got the right infrastructure. When government does its job well, our business owners are able to own, run, create, and grow their businesses. That creates more private sector paychecks and bigger private sector paychecks. The other thing we have to do on that here, Rob, in Missouri, is that we have to rebuild a culture of hard work and personal responsibility. They just did a study of all of the 50 states of our abilities to move people off of welfare to work. And out of all 50 states, Missouri ranks 50th.
Wow.
Now, look, I have worked, Rob, with a lot of men and women, veterans who've come back home, and they found themselves on food stamps, on welfare, on disability. And what we did at the Mission Continues, Rob, we worked with them to help them to get quality private sector jobs and to start their own businesses. Yeah. For me, this is not an abstraction. I've worked with thousands of these men and women, and I know that we can do better, but we have some backwards priorities in Missouri that, all of these programs which are meant to help people out of poverty too often instead trap them in it. And we need to build that economy rooted in those core values of hard work and personal responsibility.
Well, I greatly appreciate you appearing on the show. Again, I want to thank you for your service. And if you're in Kansas City anytime soon, we'd love to have you live in studio if you get the opportunity.
Rob, I would love to join you live in the studio, and I'll actually mention to all of your listeners, I'm going to be in the Kansas City area tomorrow on Friday.
Okay.
And at 6:45 p.m., we're going to be doing a town hall at the Adams Point Conference Center, just there in Blue Springs. So
very good.
Welcome everybody to come out. Love to be in studio with you, Rob.
All right, very good. And make sure to check out EricGreitens.com. That's GREITENS.com. We'll post that on our social media, Facebook and Twitter. Eric Greitens, very nice to talk to you. Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Rob. Talk to you soon.